A black woman was kicked out of a luxury restaurant for making a reservation. Minutes later, her husband left the entire dining room in stunned silence. Under the dim city lights of Atlanta, Maya Brooks, a humble community school teacher, walked into the upscale restaurant Le Chateau Blanc. All she wanted was a simple thing, to book a table for her 10th wedding anniversary. But instead of a reservation, she received looks of disdain, a cold rejection, and ultimately an order to leave the restaurant, right in front of the other diners' sneers and smirks. All because of her gray sweater, her brown skin, and the simple fact that her presence wasn't high class enough. She walked out silently. 3 minutes later, a sleek Bentley pulled up. The man who stepped out was one of the wealthiest men in America. A modest woman loved by a city, except in the one place she was about to enter. Across town, Maya Brooks had just finished her afternoon class at West Side Community Center. Chalk dust still lingered on her fingers. Her faded gray sweater draped casually over her shoulder, and her old sneakers made soft sounds with every step. Maya, 35 years old, is known to local black teens as Miss Maya. She's not rich, not glamorous, but carries something everyone respects: quiet resilience. That afternoon, she had spent hours helping her students write life plans. She told them, "Nudo, you don't have to be rich, but you do need a reason to get out of bed every morning." As the day ended, Maya stepped outside. The air was crisp. The city lights began to flicker on. She held her phone tightly. She had a plan, a secret gift for the love of her life, Ethan. And it started with a dinner reservation at a place she never thought she'd return to. She thought she'd just stop by for a minute. That moment shook the entire city. Atlanta at night. Street lamps casting a golden glow, car horns blending with jazz music from a nearby cafe. Maya walked along Peachtree Street, sleeves pulled tight against the cold. She looked up at a towering glass building, where chandeliers sparkled behind thick panes. Le Chateau Blanc, the restaurant where, 10 years ago, she and Ethan had their first date. Back then, Ethan was a broke coder. Maya was an activist handing out flyers at a bus stop. They shared a single seafood dish, the cheapest on the menu. Today, Ethan is one of the most influential tech founders in America, but Maya held on to one thing. We started with nothing, and still love each other with everything. She stood before the glass door, adjusting her hair. Just wanted to book a table for Friday, their anniversary. But one thing she didn't know, this place was no longer what it used to be. Everything inside was dazzling. But from the first moment, Maya knew she wasn't welcome. The door opened, releasing a wave of lavender and aged wine, as if Maya had stepped into a different social class. The soft clink of silverware on porcelain, quiet laughter, and chandeliers lighting perfectly ironed white tablecloths. Maya's footsteps echoed on the marble floor, quiet but loud enough to pierce the refined air. Several glances turned her way, not for long, but long enough. She didn't belong here. Her worn sweater, chalk-stained jeans, and frayed sneakers didn't fit this polished space. Still, Maya walked toward the front desk. She took a deep breath, smiled. It's just a reservation, she told herself, and they can't say no, right? She didn't yell, she didn't resist, she just smiled politely, like she had 100 times before, judged only by her skin. Behind the front desk stood a white woman named Carla, hair tightly pinned, black-fitted blazer, posture stiff as a clock hand. Her eyes scanned Maya like a barcode, from untamed curly hair, white chalk on jeans, worn shoes. I'd like to book a table for Friday night, Maya said gently. It's for our anniversary. Carla pressed her lips together. A short silence. She lowered her hand onto the reservation book, but didn't open it. I'm sorry, she said, colder than the AC. We're fully booked for the next 2 months. Maya pursed her lips, but didn't give up. I understand. This place means a lot to us. My husband and I had our first date here 10 years ago. I just wanted to relive that memory. Carla looked up. Her gaze stayed flat. Her hands stayed locked over the book, guarding it like a symbol of authority. As I said, completely booked. Completely. That voice held no space for hope, and Maya realized the rejection wasn't in the reservation book, it was in their eyes. She wasn't rich, she wasn't flashy, but she shouldn't have to be worthy just to be treated like a person. Maya held her soft smile, her eyes steady. I know it's busy, but if there's a wait list or any cancellation, even just a small table... Carla tilted her head, lips curved into a razor-thin smile that never touched her eyes. We don't operate on... What ifs, ma'am? The word ma'am landed like Maya had soiled the air. She stood there, under chandeliers, soft classical music, and a coldness that couldn't be seen but deeply felt. Maya glanced around. Eyes still glanced at her. Some turned away. None stepped in. A man in a suit at the nearest table whispered to his date, "This isn't a soup kitchen." She heard it, but didn't react. It wasn't the first time. Only this time she was trying to do something good, something small for someone she loved. And they turned her down, like she was asking for a favor. The first insult didn't come from the staff, but from a drunk regular who thought he ruled the place. Footsteps echoed loudly toward the front desk. A man approached, Gregory Kane, about heavy-set, flushed from wine, his Italian suit stuffed with ego. "Carla, why isn't my table ready?" he boomed, cutting off the conversation. He hadn't noticed Maya until his eyes caught the gray sweater and old sneakers. A smirk flickered, then disappeared. He leaned toward Carla and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thought this place had standards. Who let her wander in here?" A small chuckle rose from behind. A woman adjusted her pearl necklace, eyeing Maya from head to toe. Maya to my turn, locking eyes with curiosity, not empathy. Gregory raised his glass like a toast, and Maya, the woman who had just taught kids to know their worth hours ago, stood in that lavish dining room, turned into the punchline of a wealthy dinner. No one had to yell at her. They just laughed and made her the joke of their expensive evening. Maya took a breath. She didn't step back, didn't flinch. "I just wanted to make a reservation. I'm not dining tonight." Her voice was calm and clear, cutting through the room's hush. Gregory turned fully. His wineglass trembled slightly, as if stunned that she dared speak. "Hear that, Carla?" he said loudly. "She's not even eating, just reserving. Thought this was a bakery on the corner." Small laughs trickled from nearby tables. Quiet but biting. A man sipped wine like watching drama on TV. A younger woman whispered, "Kinda brave, though." Maya stood tall, not angry, but her gaze no longer gentle. She wasn't upset at being turned down. She was tired of this scene being so common, and so accepted. Behind the counter, Carla stayed silent. No laughter, no intervention, and that silence gave Gregory permission to go further. No one stood up for her, no one stopped him, and that was the most painful part. Gregory took a step closer, unapologetic in his contempt. "Look at yourself," he sneered, scanning the collarless sweater, chalky jeans, and worn sneakers. "This isn't fast food. This is Le Chateau Blanc. People wear suits, not chalkboard rags." Laughter broke out louder now, dry, short, and complicit. Maya stood still, her hands clenched. Chalk from her fingers smeared into her palms, a trace from the afternoon's lesson. She looked at Carla, still silent. Gregory shook his head, voice dripping with disgust. "You won't be booking anything here. This place isn't for people like you, and I don't want you here when my guests arrive." A silence rippled. Heavy, cold. The room, from golden lights to red wine, seemed to freeze. Maya lifted her head, met the gaze of everyone. No one laughed now, but no one spoke either. Then she opened her mouth. For the first time, her voice didn't carry gentleness. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, she just said one sentence, and the whole room fell silent. Maya's hands tightened slightly, but her voice stayed completely calm. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm just trying to book a table for my wedding anniversary." She lifted her chin, staring directly into Gregory's eyes. "I didn't ruin anyone's dinner. I didn't raise my voice. I'm just standing here, like anyone else." The room fell completely still. Wineglasses hovered in midair. Glances shifted, but no one spoke. High heels clicked, sharp, deliberate, cutting the silence like a verdict. From the back of the lobby, a middle-aged woman approached, Vivian, the restaurant manager. Black blazer with gold buttons, blonde hair neatly pinned. Her eyes cold as silver and ice. "What's going on here?" The question wasn't for Maya. It was aimed at Carla and Gregory. A signal. Carla quickly pointed toward Maya, avoiding her eyes. "A guest. Without a reservation, creating a disturbance at the front." Vivian turned to Maya. A brief glance. Then a polite, firm voice. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you're disturbing our other guests. If you don't have a reservation, I'll have to ask you to leave the lobby." No apology, no offer of help. Just a cold message that you don't belong here. She didn't stay because she was stubborn, but because she was tired of always making room for others. Today she chose to stay. Maya stood her ground, eyes locked on Vivian. the embodiment of every place that had once told her she didn't belong. "I'm not being loud. I'm not causing a scene," she said calmly. "I'm simply asking for what anyone else here has asked for and received, a table reservation." Vivian tilted her head slightly, as if evaluating not Maya's words, but whether she had the right to speak at all. "I understand," Vivian replied, voice smooth as velvet, but with a blade beneath it. "However, this establishment has certain standards, and right now you are making other guests uncomfortable." Maya let out a small smile, but it wasn't soft. "Uncomfortable because of my sweater? Because of the chalk on my hands? Or because I'm the only black woman standing here without a menu in my hand?" The air in the room tightened. Wine glasses paused mid-air, spoons hung above bowls. Vivian pursed her lips. Carla remained behind her, silent and unwilling to step in. "I'm not here to disturb the atmosphere," Maya continued, "but I also won't be erased from the place that holds one of the most beautiful memories of my life." "No security guards, just a young staffer, too junior to argue, but his eyes already questioned the command." Vivian didn't respond. Her tone dropped lower but sharper. "I've been very polite, but you're disrupting the environment, whether intentionally or not, so I must ask you to leave, immediately." Silence. No one moved. No one intervened. Vivian turned away, not waiting for a reply, and whispered to Carla, "Call Jordan." From the far end of the room, a young staffer stepped out. Maybe 19 or 20, slim, his uniform a little too big. Jordan, his eyes quick but now unsure, like he'd been pulled into a scene he wasn't ready for. "Jordan, please escort the guest outside," Carla said without looking at Maya, as if removing a misplaced chair. Jordan hesitated. His eyes flicked from Maya to Carla, back to Maya. Maya remained standing, eyes steady. Jordan opened his mouth softly. "Ma'am, I was asked to..." Maya smiled. Not bitter, not angry. "I understand." But in her gaze, Jordan saw something he'd never seen from someone being asked to leave. Not fear, but dignity, crushed underfoot, and nothing left to lose. No one yelled. No one pushed. But the entire room knew what they had just pushed out was a good human being. Maya turned quietly. Jordan walked beside her, awkward hands unsure where to rest. No one touched her, but the space itself seemed to shove her out. Her footsteps echoed on the marble, steady and deliberate, each one tapping on her dignity. No one saw her off. No one stopped it. Only a few glances passed over, some indifferent, some regretful, but not enough to act. Gregory Kane raised his wineglass and chuckled. "Guess she finally got the rules, huh?" Jordan turned to him. For the first time that shift, he no longer saw Gregory as a VIP, just an old man with a venomous mouth and a laugh soaked in cruelty. The glass doors opened. Cold air swept in. Maya stepped out, never turning back. Behind her, the opulent world sealed shut, like a crystal box never meant for those without gold plating. And just then, a low engine sound echoed from the end of the street. A sleek black Bentley was approaching. She stood there like a silent punctuation mark in the night, and fate stopped with the soft breath of a luxury car's brakes. Wind slipped through Maya's sweater. Her hands tightened, no chalk now, only chilled palms bracing her dignity. Behind her, the glass doors shut with a soft click. Not loud, but inside her it rang like the lock sealing away a memory. She took a breath. Didn't cry, didn't shake. She just stood on the cold sidewalk beneath Atlanta's shimmering streetlights. Then a low hum rose at the end of the street. Headlights cut through the evening air. A black Bentley glided to a stop. It halted right in front of Maya. The door opened. Ethan Brooks. Dark blue suit, wind-tousled hair, face weary but eyes sharp like a man coming from a dozen war rooms. He didn't speak. He just looked at her. Messy hair, limp arms, faded sweater, and eyes carrying something he'd never seen before. A wound that didn't bleed. A slap no one threw, but everyone witnessed. He didn't need the story, he just needed to look at her, and he knew something had crossed a line. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes absorbing every detail. Her sweater slightly wrinkled, her hands tucked quietly into her sleeves. Behind her, the restaurant still glowed, but Maya no longer existed in that light. "Are you okay?" A simple question, soft, but it pulled the world back toward Maya. She nodded. Just a slight nod, one no one would believe. Ethan reached for her cold hand, feeling the tremble she was holding in with grace. "What happened?" he asked again, quieter now. Maya didn't answer right away, but in her eyes, Ethan saw it all. The way she didn't look back, the way she stood still yet had clearly been pushed, and the way her gaze still held kindness. Even after being crushed, Ethan nodded. "All right," he said. "Let me go in." He turned, navy suit catching the streetlight, black shoes tapping the steps, each step a brewing storm. No one knew his name until they had to, and when they did, they wished they'd acted 5 minutes earlier. The glass doors opened. Ethan Brooks stepped inside, the city's light glinting off his sharp suit and polished shoes. He didn't rush, but each step carried the weight of reputation, power, and justice. Conversation died down. One person turned, then another. Within seconds, the whole room stopped chewing. Carla, the receptionist, recognized him first. Her face went from composed to uncertain. Vivian, adjusting a tablecloth nearby, looked up. Her instincts as a manager screamed, "This is bad!" Ethan didn't glance around. He walked straight to the front desk, stopped. His voice wasn't loud, but dropped like stone in still water. "I'm looking for my wife. She was just thrown out of here." Carla opened her mouth, about to interject, but Ethan cut in, calm and firm. "My name is Ethan Brooks." And the room broke into stunned silence. No one screamed, but everyone knew they had messed up badly. Carla froze. Her face turned pale as the table linens. Her hand still touched the reservation book, but couldn't lift it anymore. Vivian stepped forward, swift but controlled, her smile still professional, but her eyes tense. "Mr. Brooks, we weren't aware. Please forgive the misunderstanding." She emphasized misunderstanding as if this had all been a simple slip. Ethan looked at her, no anger in his eyes, but icy precision. "Misunderstanding?" he repeated softly, each syllable slicing the air. Vivian took a breath, trying to stay composed. "We're just trying to ensure the best experience for our guests. There are certain standards." "What kind of standards?" Ethan asked, cutting in, voice low but sharp and absolute. Silence again. A man paused mid-slice of his steak. A woman with pearls swallowed dryly, wine still clinging to her glass. Ethan stared at Vivian, waiting. They all knew this was no longer a polite clarification. This was an interrogation. No shouting, no threats. Ethan Brooks dismantled them with just one timely question. Vivian blinked. Her smile flickered like fabricated being pulled the wrong way. "Of course, we don't discriminate. We just have certain service protocols, dress codes." Ethan tilted his head, his gaze now like a laser burning through her excuses. "Dress code?" he repeated. "You mean my wife, the woman who stood out there in the cold after being thrown out, wearing a gray sweater and sneakers, wasn't good enough to book a table?" Vivian opened her mouth, but no sound came. The room was thick with discomfort. No one ate, no one spoke. They only listened, watching the mask fall apart. "I dress properly," a soft voice spoke from the back. "And I was turned away last year," a black woman whispered, eyes cast downward. But her words struck like ice water. Vivian flinched. Ethan didn't lower his voice. He didn't need to. "If the person standing here earlier wore a suit, had white skin, and was me, would you have thrown him out?" Vivian swallowed hard. And then a laugh. Gregory Kane, oblivious, arrogant. He was about to throw himself into a hurricane, and it would be his biggest mistake of the night. Some people think they're making jokes until they realize they're the punchline. Gregory slammed his wine glass on the table and stood, still red with drunken arrogance. "Oh, so this is her husband." His voice rang out, meant to be heard by everyone. "I thought you were some CEO, and you married that?" A faint gasp rolled through the room. Ethan didn't turn. He faced Gregory directly. "The woman you're talking about," he said, each word sharp as steel, "is my wife, Onya." Gregory froze, like winter wind just kissed his neck. "Wife?" He stumbled back, then laughed awkwardly. "No way, I mean, she..." Ethan stepped forward. Not threatening, but the room stepped back anyway. "My wife, Maya Brooks, Director of Community Education Programs, board member of the Brooks Foundation, and the reason I survived the darkest moments of my life." No one ate, no one spoke. Only the heavy breath of collective shame. Vivian and Carla remained frozen. Gregory looked around, and for the first time no one laughed with him. And Maya, standing outside the glass doors, saw it all. When truth enters the room, privilege doesn't vanish. It just cowers in shame. Gregory tried to stammer a defense, but his voice one moment was hoarse and broken. "I didn't mean anything. I just didn't know." Ethan cut him off. not loud but weighty. And because you didn't know, you thought you had the right to belittle a woman based on her appearance and her skin? No one moved. The clink of glass hitting plate was the only sound. Ethan turned to Vivian, still frozen like a statue. Tonight, the only person who caused a disturbance wasn't my wife. It was him. He nodded toward Gregory. And apparently is, your restaurant's unspoken policy. Carla lowered her head. Vivian inhaled sharply, but no one replied. A beat of silence. Then an elderly gentleman in a tuxedo rose from his seat. Beside him, his silver-haired wife sat poised, her gaze calm. He nodded to Ethan. You're right. And the cracks in the restaurant began to form from the inside. The truth doesn't need to be shouted. It only needs one person to stand. Then another will follow. The elderly man turned to Vivian. We've been dining here for over 10 years, his wife gently added, and we've never seen such raw indifference. Both of them looked toward Maya, still standing outside the glass wall, hand gripping her purse strap, her eyes both weary and resolute. We won't return to this place, he said. Not even once more. He placed his napkin on the table. His wife linked her arm with his. Not dramatic, not loud, but the whole restaurant saw it clearly. That was a declaration. Several guests exchanged glances. A woman quietly removed her earrings and placed them on her plate. A group of young people stood silently, nodding once toward Maya. No more words were needed, but each departing footstep echoed, like a bell ringing clarity into the air. Carla took a step back. Vivian stared at the table. Gregory had slumped into his seat, face ghost pale. Ethan turned and walked toward the glass doors. Maya looked up. Their eyes met, and then he opened the door. Sometimes you walk out of a place just to prove you can walk back in, on your own terms. Ethan pushed open the glass door. The night breeze swept in, cold but not cruel. It carried away the shame Maya had shouldered only minutes ago. He held out his hand, saying nothing. Maya looked at it, hesitated for a second, then placed her hand in his. That hand was warm, steady, certain. She stepped over the threshold. This time, no judgmental stares. Some of the remaining guests quietly set their wine glasses down, stood, and stepped aside. No one blocked their path. No one spoke. Maya and Ethan walked in, stride for stride, as if this space belonged to them. Only the soft sound of her heels tapped the marble. An echo that was once ignored now rang out like truth. Vivian, still standing by the podium, didn't dare speak, and Maya lifted her chin. Not prideful, not angry, just herself, this time in the right place with the dignity that was always hers. They once denied her a voice. Now she didn't need permission. Maya stood across from Vivian, the woman who once saw her as a mistake. She didn't smile, didn't bow, just spoke softly but clearly. I'll say it again. I came here to reserve a table for our 10th wedding anniversary. A pause. Vivian swallowed hard. Her lips pressed together. Maya looked her in the eye. We chose this place because it's where we first met, not because of the sparkle you've built on a foundation of bias. Margaret emerged from the back, face tight, trying to hold a professional posture. Sir, ma'am, I think perhaps it's better if we discuss this privately. Ethan turned, his voice low and firm. No need. Everything you've done has already said enough. No one responded. For a few seconds, the entire restaurant fell silent, as if everyone could hear the quiet collapse happening inside themselves. Not everyone who walks out of a restaurant is the one who lost. Ethan turned to Maya. She looked at him. Their eyes met, a crossing of pride, pain, and unconditional love. Maya looked back at Vivian and Margaret, her gaze sharp but not hateful. I don't need you to seat me at a table when you've already turned this place into an empty chair. She turned to Ethan. Let's go. He nodded, gently placing a hand on her back. Margaret stepped forward hastily. Wait, Mr. Johnson, we can rearrange. Ethan didn't turn around. You've rearranged enough. The issue isn't the table, so it's how you see people. Not angry, not loud, but each word dropped like a stone. Maya and Ethan walked out, past pristine white tables, past eyes that no longer held arrogance, but discomfort, regret, and silence. Sometimes change begins with the one person no one noticed. The door hadn't even closed behind Maya and Ethan when a young voice called from the back of the room. Wait! Wait. Every head turned toward James, the young server, barely in his 20s. His uniform was wrinkled from a long shift, and the menu in his gloved hand trembled slightly. Margaret snapped around, her voice low and sharp. James, back to table 6. But James didn't retreat. He stepped forward, eyes locked on hers. Ms. Margaret, earlier you said she didn't belong, but you didn't even let her finish her sentence. The air froze. Guests held their breath. I heard Ms. Maya speak, the way she talked to the way Mr. Ethan stood up for her, said they didn't do anything wrong. But you defended Mr. Gregory, the man who humiliated her in front of the entire dining room. James pulled off his gloves, placed them on the front desk. I can't keep working at a place that values suits over dignity. Vivian's eyes widened. Margaret went speechless. Gregory scoffed. I quit. Simple. No microphone needed. But James's words thundered through the suffocating silence like a storm rolling in. Conscience has no class, and justice can begin at the most expensive table. As the room still reeled from James's resignation, 2 elderly figures slowly stood from a table in the corner. An older woman with silver hair and a graceful bun, wearing a simple but elegant black dress. Beside her, a thin but upright old man adjusted a slightly crooked bow tie, clearly moved. The soft tap of a cane that echoed on the marble floor, slow, somewhat steady. The young man is right. That woman, Maya, was not treated like a human being. Everyone turned to look. The woman raised her chin. We've been loyal customers here for 15 years, but tonight will be our last. We used to think this place represented class, but now it's only coldness and pretense. The room fell into deep silence. The sound of cutlery ceased. The man added, voice gravelly but firm, we cannot stand behind how you treated someone who only wanted to book a table to celebrate her marriage. Away. They placed their napkins on the chairs, then turned, walking toward the door. No one tried to stop them. Not every silence is acceptance. Some pain stands tall just to keep the tears from falling. Outside the restaurant, the night wind swept through Maya's curls. She hugged herself tightly, even though Ethan had already draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. Ethan looked at her, silent. His eyes held sorrow, anger, helplessness, and a kind of pain that didn't belong to his skin color, but tore at him because of the woman he loved. Maya spoke very softly. I'm okay. A familiar phrase, but this time, Ethan didn't let it pass. Don't say that again. He turned, facing Maya, placing both hands on her shoulders. Okay doesn't mean unhurt. Maya gave a faint smile, but her eyes shimmered. I'm used to it. The looks, the snide comments. At school, at work, the grocery store. And now, just for trying to book a table. She looked up at the golden light spilling from the restaurant windows, the place that once held the most beautiful memory of their lives. How can something so beautiful that it be tarnished so easily? Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently, because they think only they get to define who deserves beauty. A strong gust swept by. They stood in silence, not in weakness, but in a quiet strength gathering for what came next. To stay silent in the face of injustice towards someone you love is to be complicit in it. Maya started to walk, but Ethan held her hand. Wait. She turned, surprised. I can't let it end like this. His voice was low but firm, and his blue eyes were no longer soft. They were sharp, like cold steel. You don't have to apologize for existing, Maya. Not tonight, not ever. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ethan gently lifted her hand, the one still dusted with chalk from her lessons. This hand has written opportunities for dozens of kids. It's built a future those people in there will never understand. He turned his eyes to the glass of the ivory tower, the place that once symbolized a beautiful beginning. They think they can erase our memories, but I won't let them. Maya furrowed her brow. What are you going to do? Ethan gave a quiet smile, the calm resolve of a man who knew the weight of every step he took. Come with me. He pulled out his phone, swiping the screen. The sleek black Bentley was already waiting by the curb. Ethan gripped her hand. We're walking back in there. And this time, like, they'll know exactly who they turned away. No yelling, no rage, just presence. Enough to make the entire room step back, even if just inwardly. The glass doors of the ivory tower swung open. Cold air swept in with each step of Ethan Reeves. Inside, the sound of silverware on porcelain halted. A few guests turned their heads. Attention spread like silent electricity. Ethan walked straight ahead. A navy suit hugged his lean frame. The light caught the sharp lines of his face. No one knew who he was at first, but everyone felt it. At the reservation desk, Rebecca, the hostess, looked up. For a split second, her face froze. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? Ethan didn't answer the question. His gaze went straight through her. I'm looking for my wife. A beat of silence. Rebecca glanced toward the glass, where Maya still stood, in her simple clothes, with dry eyes, but no longer bowed. Ethan stepped closer, voice smooth as code. She came here to reserve a table, for our 10-year wedding anniversary. He paused. His tone dropped colder, and was told to leave. No apology, no explanation. Rebecca began to stammer. Behind her, guests started whispering. Someone finally recognized him. Tech billionaire Ethan Reeves, founder of Artie Nova Systems. A young diner murmured, "That's him. He's all over every financial headline lately." The room tightened. Rebecca swallowed hard. I didn't realize she was your wife. Ethan didn't blink. That's the problem. You don't need to know someone's name to learn how to treat them with respect. The door behind him remained open, the night air still cold, but Ethan's words colder. Sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in your true worth for you to walk tall again. Maya stepped inside, not to prove anything, not to make a statement, but because Ethan held her hand and said only one sentence. This is ours. You have no reason to walk away. As they entered the lobby, the sound of Maya's footsteps merged with Ethan's, like a quiet drumbeat that stilled the room. Her gray sweater, once the reason for judgment, now stood as a symbol. Between truth and facade, between real worth and false polish, the restaurant held its breath. A couple, hand in hand, walked past white-draped tables, expensive wine glasses, and shifting stairs. Charles Whitman, the privileged regular, lowered his glass. His smirk vanished the moment Ethan's gaze swept past. Nearby, whispers began. That's her. His wife. Maya Reeves, the founder of Urban Rise, the youth education program for underprivileged teens. Rebecca took a step back. Maya stopped in front of her. No raised voice, no anger. She asked one question, soft, but it landed like stone on marble in the quiet room. If I had walked in without holding his hand, would you have apologized to me? Rebecca opened her mouth. No sound came out. Ethan turned to Maya, nodding gently. Now it's your choice. Stay or go. But know this. You've already won. Arrogance only thrives when it faces silence. But today is a day I met a wall. Charles Whitman, the man used to being the loudest presence in any room, smirked slightly, setting down his wineglass. The cold clink echoed on the marble table. He leaned back, his voice heavy, cutting through the room. Oh, so the lady wasn't lost, just ahead of her husband by a few steps. A few scoffs followed from Charles's table. Those who once mocked Maya now clung to him like rats to a sinking ship. Charles continued, his tone steady like a boardroom monologue. This world runs on order and standards, we all know that. If anyone can walk in here today, just wearing sweaters and spinning sentimental tales, then this place won't be called the Ivory Tower for long. His gaze swept across Maya, then landed on Ethan, like a challenge. And if anyone thinks a Bentley can buy back dignity to a... Sorry, I'm not impressed. The entire room fell silent. Ethan's expression remained calm, but his voice, for the first time, rose slightly. You're wrong, Charles. He released Maya's hand and took one quiet step toward Charles's table. A Bentley can't buy dignity. He paused, then added, firmly, but what you just said proves that status doesn't teach people how to respect others. No one dared respond. Even those once cozy with Charles now looked down at their plates, pretending to eat. Maya stepped beside Ethan, taking his hand. We don't need to sit here, she said, voice clear. Just knowing this place isn't some high ground anymore. It's a hollow shell filled with people who forgot how to listen. Not everyone has privilege, but everyone has a choice, and he chose to stand on the right side. No one expected the next person to break the silence to be James, the young server just turned 20. He stood there, still holding a water tray, his eyes scanning the room where most were avoiding the truth just exposed. Then he gently tapped a glass on his tray. Clink. A small sound. But in that moment it rang out like an alarm bell shaking a room lulled by false comfort. James took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly but clear. I was the one asked to escort her out. The room turned toward him. I did it, even though I knew it was wrong. Maya looked at James, not with blame but quietly. Ethan gave a small nod, an unspoken gesture of encouragement. James removed his apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the tray. They didn't let me speak then, but now I will. He turned to Margaret, the manager who had ordered him to deal with her. I quit. Effective immediately, I won't work for a place that hides discrimination behind white tablecloths and red wine anymore. The room trembled. Other servers looked at one another, some clenched fists, others bit their lips. James turned to Maya. You don't need to apologize for walking in here. This place should apologize for not being worthy of your presence. The air tilted. This wasn't just a black woman being humiliated anymore. It had become a declaration. We won't stay silent anymore. Silence is complicity, but today one couple chose to stand in the light. The room remained still after James walked out. No one moved. No one dared. Until two soft scraping sounds echoed, chairs shifting. From a corner table by the window, an older couple rose, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. She wore a simple black dress, her silver hair neatly pinned, eyes calm but unshakable. He leaned gently on a wooden cane, adjusted his tie, and stepped into the center of the room. The restaurant held its breath. Mrs. Harrison didn't address the staff. She turned to Ethan and Maya, her voice warm and steady. You're not alone. Then she faced the entire dining room, her voice rising, confident, like someone who had led countless community meetings. We've dined here for 15 years, but tonight will be our last. A murmur rippled like waves. She continued, unwavering. We can't keep supporting a place that values appearance over dignity. A restaurant isn't defined by fine wine or folded napkins. It's defined by how it just treats the vulnerable. Mr. Harrison nodded. And if you sit quietly today, saying nothing, who knows? Tomorrow it might be you or your children being treated this way. They walked out. No more words, no applause needed, just a heavy silence from faces that had laughed at Maya minutes before. Another crack in the elite mask of the ivory tower. A story once thought small was becoming a symbol of awakening. Fake power doesn't crumble from shouting, it crumbles from quiet exits. Margaret, the woman who once commanded the restaurant with firm words and posture, now stood frozen. She looked around. One employee had quit. One VIP couple had left. And now, the entire room no longer stood with her. Sophia, the front desk manager, whispered in a panicked voice, We need to manage PR, if this hits the internet. Margaret cut her off. Keep quiet. We still have control. But that line dripped with fear, not confidence. From the kitchen, a pastry chef peeked out, eyes locking with James's. No words, but his stare asked, Are we still on the same side? Then a young couple stood up, no speech, just quietly grabbed their coats and walked out. Another guest signaled for the check, one by one, no noise, but enough to leave the restaurant visibly emptier. Margaret, face flushed with rage and anxiety, turned to Ethan, voice sharp. You win. You and your wife just ruined this place. Ethan didn't reply. Maya didn't either. But their silence, that was the strongest response of all. No clinking cutlery, no laughter, just the sound of a base unraveling. The ivory tower built from status and prejudice, cracking from the inside. The truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs to arrive at the right moment. The restaurant air felt frozen. Margaret and Sophia stood silent. Charles still forced a crooked smirk. But his eyes had lost their swagger. Ethan turned to Maya, gave her hand a soft squeeze. Then he stepped forward, voice low but steady, echoing across the now silent dining hall. I think there are some things people in this room need to know. He looked at Margaret, then glanced at Charles. The woman you refused to serve, the woman you mocked for her outfit and her skin, is my wife. Clink. A glass dropped somewhere. A diner sipped wine at the wrong time, choking slightly. Ethan continued without pause. Maya isn't just my wife. She's the founder of a scholarship program that's pulled hundreds of black students out of the poverty cycle. She's the CEO of the Steadfast Heart Foundation, recognized by Forbes Impact 100. A nearby staff member's jaw dropped. That name, he remembered it from orientation. Ethan turned back to Maya, his gaze softening. And she stood by me when I was just a broke coder. It was Maya who kept me going before anyone even knew my name. Heavy silence. The room's gazes shifted, from judgment to shame. Charles opened his mouth to speak, but Ethan locked eyes with him, this time with razor-sharp calm. And as for you, so I don't need to know who you are. But from now on, you'll remember who I am, and why this place no longer deserves its guests. A breath. Ethan turned to Maya, asked gently, "Ready?" Maya nodded. The couple turned away from the room, step by step, toward the door. No fury, no applause, just the silent revelation of a room exposed by its own indifference. They didn't walk out because they gave up. They walked away from what was no longer worthy. The automatic doors slid open. October's cold wind swept through the restaurant, snuffing out any arrogance left in its faded gold light. Ethan walked out first. Maya followed. Small frame wrapped in a gray coat, walking not from a dinner but as if from a courtroom. The black Bentley waited like it had always known this moment. The driver said nothing, simply opened the door respectfully. Inside the restaurant, no one had yet exhaled. James, the young server once ordered to remove Maya, stood by the wall, stunned. But inspired by Ethan's example, he stepped forward. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. Maya looked back. She didn't scold, she simply nodded once. A look of forgiveness, but not forgetfulness. At that moment, a woman in a red dress, who had once sneered during Maya's humiliation, stood up. Her eyes darted, then dropped. From another table, a man adjusted his tie and gestured for his wife to leave. They walked out in silence. The doors shut behind Maya and Ethan. The Bentley pulled away, quietly, but with the weight of a final period. No one inside spoke, no music, no laughter, and only the silent scratching at every conscience. Some places never apologize, until the whole world is watching. The next morning, Atlanta woke up to a cold breeze and a social media firestorm. A 2-minute video had surfaced showing Ethan holding Maya's hand as they exited the ivory tower, with a simple caption, "Billionaire Ethan Blake and wife denied service at luxury restaurant because of outfit and skin color." Within hours, the video passed 1 million views. The comments flooded in, and I was treated the same way there, not surprised. Wait, Maya Blake is the founder of Seed Education Fund? They turned her away? The ivory tower, where white skin gets service and ethics get tossed. The ivory tower's official Twitter locked replies. Their website crashed for 30 minutes under the traffic overload. An anonymous insider leaked an internal email from manager Margaret. No need to be polite with people who don't fit the ideal customer model. The screenshot spread like wildfire. Major outlets picked up the story. The Atlanta Times. The woman they kicked out is the same woman who gave thousands of children a future. Forbes Impact. From prejudice to PR disaster, how one disrespectful act shook an entire brand. At home, Maya sat by the window, scrolling through the headlines with deep, quiet eyes. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to carry all this." Maya looked at him and smiled gently. "I'm not carrying it. I'm letting them finally see it for themselves. The cost of silence isn't money. It's losing those who dare to stand tall." 2 days after the viral clip, the ivory tower reopened, but the usual line of guests was gone. Front desk staff rotated constantly. Some quit, others gave vague excuses. A heavy silence filled the lobby, starkly different from its usual sparkle. In the management office, Margaret held the first resignation letter. The sender, James Wells, the young employee who escorted Maya out that night. The last line made her unable to lift her head. "I used to think I was small and powerless, but thanks to them I now know silence is complicity." Soon after, Sophia, the front desk manager who had spoken directly with Maya, sent her own resignation, this time with a public confession on her LinkedIn. "I used to laugh at difference, thinking I was protecting the brand. Now I see I was protecting discrimination." The post gained over 500,000 shares and became a second public tipping point. At an emergency board meeting, shareholders began pressing the executive team. "Are we investing in a brand as or a national scandal?" An elderly investor stated bluntly, "If this is how they treat a billionaire's wife, what happens to the average customer?" Meanwhile, a Georgia-based human rights nonprofit submitted a petition demanding an official investigation into the restaurant's discriminatory practices. The first 10,000 signatures came in just 6 hours. Maya watched the news. Not angry, just calm, as if she had seen it coming. Ethan set down her coffee and asked, "Are you happy?" Maya smiled gently. "No, but I know. Some walls must fall before the light can get in. When you tell your story, you don't just heal, you open doors for a silenced generation." Friday afternoon, Maya stepped into a well-lit studio where the local TV station was ready. Interview chairs upholstered in soft tan, a glass of water nearby, cameras in place. The host, a middle-aged black woman, smiled warmly. "Thank you for being here. What would you like to say to Atlanta? And to those who saw themselves in that video?" Maya nodded softly. She clenched her hands briefly, eyes not angry, but profound. "I'm not speaking up because I was denied a table. I'm speaking for the thousands that denied a place in society just because they don't look acceptable." The screen cut to viewers watching intently. A single mother nodding, eyes brimming with tears. A young man in a hoodie quietly watching from a barber shop. Maya continued, her voice clear, never shouting. "I used to think if I behaved, dressed right, got educated, I would be respected. But the truth is, for some, my skin color was already a disqualifier, no matter what I did." The host paused, voice catching slightly. "And now, what do you plan to do with that voice?" Maya smiled, her expression glowing with quiet warmth. "I don't want the spotlight. I just want people to know, if a woman in a gray sweater can make a restaurant change, then you can do something for justice too, even in the smallest act." The final clip went viral with a striking quote, "I don't want pity, I want a society where respect doesn't need permission." Maya Blake. That same day, the hashtag #HowStand with Maya hit the national top 3 on Twitter. Influencers, politicians, and artists reposted the interview, many adding stories of their own. Across town, James, the former waiter, sat with old friends. He looked at his phone and then up. "You think I should really try?" One friend nodded. "If Maya dared to, why not you?" 4 pages long, but 22 years of James's life compressed into every word. It was late. In a small apartment, warm yellow light bathed a desk cluttered with papers. James, the young man once told to escort Maya out, sat before his laptop typing with all his heart. Sweat on his brow. On the desk, ramen boxes, messy sticky notes, project name, Bridge, a pathway for overlooked youth. Mission: teach soft skills and basic coding to teens denied chances due to their background. First Center, West Side, where I grew up, where I was once rejected. He paused, finger hovering over send. His heart pounded. What if they don't reply? What if they think I'm just chasing clout? But then he remembered Maya's gaze that night. Not angry, not loud, but solid as stone in a storm. He exhaled. Clicked. Send. Subject: proposal from Maya Ethan Blake. Foundation, a chance to make things right, not just for me. Days later, in their 18th floor office, Maya opened her laptop. Ethan had just finished making coffee. She read the email quietly. "Remember that waiter?" Ethan looked up. The one who quit everything because he couldn't stand injustice? Maya turned the screen to him. "He's going further now." Ethan read, his face shifting from surprise to admiration. "This isn't a proposal. This is a calling." He typed a reply. "We want to meet. Bridge isn't just an idea. It's something the city truly needs." Refused because of her skin? The Ivory Tower scandal is forcing Atlanta to rethink itself. Atlanta Journal, front page, Monday morning. Laptop screen opened. Bold headline read, "Behind the glamour, the real story inside the Ivory Tower." Below it, CCTV stills leaked to the press. Maya facing Sophia and Margaret. Another shot of Ethan holding Maya's hand, eyes cutting through the restaurant's pretentious atmosphere. Social media exploded. If her husband weren't a billionaire, would this story ever be heard? This isn't just about a restaurant, it's about how society works. This is what black women deal with daily, only this time there was a camera. At the Ivory Tower's corporate office, Margaret and Sophia sat pale-faced before a screen. "We need to issue a statement now," Sophia whispered, "before the investors react." Margaret stayed silent. On screen, email from HQ. Response required within 24 hours. Internal investigation to commence immediately. Elsewhere in a small cafe, James watched the news. He froze seeing himself in the footage. Taking off his uniform, tossing his apron onto Sophia's desk. Caption below read, Young man says no to injustice. One small act, one loud punctuation mark. He texted Maya. It's big now, sis. She replied, good, but not enough. They need to see real value, not a polished apology. In a high-level boardroom, stakeholders argued. One stood up. Brand value has dropped 18% in just 3 days. If we don't act, we'll lose everything. Another slammed the table. This isn't just PR, this is the core culture of the company. A mistake can be forgiven, but clinging to prejudice, that fractures the entire system. 35th floor boardroom, corporate HQ of the company owning the Ivory Tower. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls showed all of Atlanta, but no one looked outside. 6 people sat around a long mahogany table, hands on thick reports labeled Reputation Crisis and Service Restructuring Proposal. And then a gray-haired board chairman looked directly at Margaret across the table. Margaret, tell me why we should keep you after all that's happened. She clenched her fists, trying to steady her voice. It was a misunderstanding. I followed protocol. Standard service criteria. An older woman interrupted, tapping the report. Criteria? When you ordered a woman out simply because she wasn't in an evening gown? Reservations down 43%. Nearly 72,000 negative comments in all days. Morning talk shows. Does discrimination start with dress codes? A young shareholder said flatly, this brand sells itself as refined and selective, but right now we're seen as selective based on skin color. Margaret's voice began to falter. I'm sorry. I just didn't think a small incident would be blown out of proportion. Wrong move. The room froze. The chairman put his pen down. You called that a small incident? He tilted his head. An employee quit mid-shift over injustice. 2 loyal guests vowed never to return. And tens of thousands watched that video within 48 hours. He stood, voice low. You are suspended pending an internal investigation. We'll issue a statement this afternoon. Margaret was stunned. You can't do this! I'm the regional manager. I've served here for 12 years. The chairman looked her straight in the eye. And after 12 years, you should know, discrimination isn't a service style. It's wrong. The boardroom door opened. Margaret walked out, slowly, heavily. She was no longer the woman who had ordered Maya out. Now she was a living lesson, on the cost of cold, outdated pride. Not everyone can speak first, but once the door opens, silence becomes complicity. Late afternoon, the break room dimly lit, soft glow from wall lamps over a small table where a few staff gathered. James, the former waiter, returned, not with an apron but with a folder. He placed it on the table, meeting their eyes. I know I don't work here anymore, but many of us have seen what happened that night. The only difference? This time it was caught on camera. Kira, a brown-skinned server with braided hair, spoke hesitantly. I was told once I didn't suit VIP service, and I've been here 3 years. Andre, a longtime waiter, sighed. We're trained to select guests by sight, not words, but that's the most subtle form of bias. No one spoke, but their eyes began to meet. James opened the folder. Inside, an internal petition, a new training program, bias-free service, an anonymous staff survey signed by over 40 employees in just 2 days. James said softly but clearly, you don't have to resign like I did, but we can choose not to be silent anymore. A new employee, just 2 months in, whispered, I'll sign, and if someone needs to speak with the new management, I'm in. Kira nodded, then Andre, then a fourth, a fifth. On the wall, the restaurant's motto, elegance is in the details. James looked at it and whispered, elegance is also in how we treat people. The light dimmed. A team was awakening, not to overthrow but to heal a broken system. If they won't give you a seat at the table, build a new one and invite the forgotten to sit with you. Late afternoon sunlight spilled through the tall windows. On the table, early drafts of a new educational project. Maya stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, eyes lit with purpose. We don't need to teach that restaurant a lesson. We just need to invest in the kids society often forgets. Daniel sat across, listening as he always did. When Maya spoke, he saw the world differently. So, what's the name? He asked softly. Maya looked down at a sketch of interlocking circles, life skills, coding, or community leadership. She wrote on the board, Open code, open future. Daniel smiled, pulled out his phone, messaged the foundation's lawyer. Approved startup funding. $500,000. Meet Maya's selected team. Prioritize West Side. We build from the cracks. So, on the table lay an old photo. Daniel and Maya, 10 years younger, holding hands outside the ivory tower. Naive, hopeful. Maya stared at it, then said, I don't want to just say they were wrong. I want to show kids they can be right in their own way. Daniel stepped closer, hand on her shoulder. And this time they won't begin from a closed door. They'll start with one we opened. Maya opened an email titled James Youth Progress Program Proposal. The first line read, Thank you, Maya. Because of you, I think maybe I don't have to be just a waiter forever. She smiled. You don't need a big stage to make impact, just a steady heart in the smallest room. On the whiteboard, career program, open code, open future. James, no longer the timid waiter, stood before 20 teens, eyes full of passion. Behind him a slide. I used to be silent. Now I choose to speak and do. The projector showed the night Maya was kicked out, taken from a viral news article. The teens murmured, She's fierce. She stood there and didn't cry. At the back of the class, Maya slipped in quietly. She didn't want attention, just to witness the seed she had planted. A 13-year-old girl with bare braided hair glanced back, eyes wide. She hesitated, then whispered, You're the lady, though, who got kicked out of that restaurant, right? Maya paused. For a second the past flashed. Taunting laughter, cold stares, silent complicity. Then she nodded, smiled. Gentle but unwavering. Yes, that's me, but I'm also the one who didn't walk away. And came back. To open a different door. James continued teaching. The slide now displayed lines of basic code. The class was building their first personal websites, learning how to speak through technology. Maya leaned against the doorway, watching intently. Evening sunlight streamed through the windows, not glimmering like the ivory tower's chandeliers, but real and warm. Forgiveness isn't erasing. It's when the wounded are strong enough not to demand vengeance, and the ones who hurt them brave enough to apologize. Maya sat at her desk, a cold cup of tea before her. Ethan prepared fresh tea in the kitchen. Tang! Her email alert chimed, from Sophia D.B. at ivorytowerhospitality.com. Subject, I'm sorry. If you can read this. Maya hesitated, then opened it. Dear Maya, I don't expect you to read this, much less forgive me. I just know that if I didn't write it, I'd remain as cold and silent as I was that night. I'm Sophia, the one behind the podium who saw you walk in and chose not to see you. That day I didn't refuse because the restaurant was full. I refused because I decided you weren't fit. And now I see that your simplicity, your courage, your strength, it showed me how wrong I was. Maya read slowly. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. I resigned, not because I was forced, but because I couldn't represent a place that had lost its humanity. I'm relearning, reading, reconnecting with people I once ignored. You don't need to forgive me, but if one day you want to use your voice to teach me, I'll listen. Sophia Maya closed her eyes. The wall of silence she'd carried cracked. Not everyone changes, but a sincere apology can be a beginning. If they won't give you a seat at the table, build a table, and welcome everyone. A weekend evening at Community Hearth. Warm yellow lights, a long wooden table with rustic cloth, the scent of baked bread drifting. Ethan and Maya entered. Not as silent guests, but as partners. Maya carried a folder. Pathways for Marginalized Teens, led by James, who'd resigned. Sponsored by the Johnson Foundation. A small sign by the entrance read, Fundraising Kickoff. Everyone is welcome. James always, sleeves rolled on a wrinkled shirt fiddled with a projector. His smile lit the room. Spotting Maya, he waved, You're here! Everyone's waiting for your speech! Maya laughed shyly and stepped toward the wooden podium. She began quietly, no mic, because the room listened with hearts. I once stood before a door and was denied because of my skin and dusty shoes. Today, I stand before a room where I see doors opening. A round of applause followed. She continued, We didn't build this program to punish anyone. We built it to affirm what society once denied. Every child, no matter where they come from, deserves opportunity. The camera swept across faces, old and young, every shade, eyes bright. A little boy held up a drawing of Maya speaking. A young father dabbed a tear. At the end, Maya turned to James. And this began not with me, but with a young man brave enough to say, I won't work for injustice. James bowed his head. The room gave him genuine applause, soft music. Rise Up played as the banner behind them unveiled. Community Hearth X Johnson Foundation, education for every young mind. No one expected a denied cup of tea, a forgotten smile that could ignite an awakening. At the Atlanta Journal, days after the community event, a reporter, Kayla Mendoza, typed rapidly. On screen, the ivory tower and the gray sweater, elegance meets prejudice. The lead image showed Maya and Ethan leaving the restaurant, their silhouettes small but defiant. Kayla typed, Maya didn't need to name herself, but those who witnessed won't forget the woman in the gray sweater, and how she endured, so a city could reflect. She hit publish. Local news reported, video of billionaire couple denied at renowned restaurant is going viral. Hashtag Ivory Mirror exceeds 3 million shares in 48 hours. A waiter resigned on the spot and a youth education initiative is launching. On social media, never going to Ivory Tower again. Thank you, Maya. You don't know how much you inspired. A beautiful slap to empty standards. Dear system, where do I donate to Community Hearth? Back at Ivory Tower's headquarters, a crisis meeting convened. The PR director shook with a resignation letter in hand. Margaret resigned this morning, and Sophia, too, with her letter to Maya. The CEO pressed hands together, exhaled, We misjudged a person and lost our reputation. A handwritten note from Sophia lay on the table. I wrote this not for forgiveness, but to acknowledge. I was wrong, and I'm learning to see people with my heart. Sophia C. Maya never asked for fame. She just wanted to reserve a table. But the world put her name in their heart. A Sunday morning in Maya and Ethan's apartment, sunlight through the windows. Maya sat at the breakfast table, warm tea in hand. Her phone buzzed with messages, social media alerts, interview invites. Ethan emerged with an iPad. You should see this. He handed it over, displayed. The New York Times headline had the gray sweater, when an ordinary woman became the wake-up call a world needed. Maya raised an eyebrow. They call me a hashtag? Ethan sat beside her. Yes. Not because of the sweater, but because of the power you wore in it. After walking away from rejection, Maya returned where she's fully seen, for community, kindness, and hope. A simple red brick building in West Atlanta. On the door, Community Hearth, everyone deserves a seat. Maya and Ethan stood outside, no chandeliers, no marble, no expensive wine, but the atmosphere was warm and genuine. Ethan asked softly, You sure? From billionaire dinners to here? Maya smiled, eyes shining. 10 years ago, it was a fine dining anniversary. 10 years later, it's dinner with those who know true value isn't in silk tablecloths. With a middle-aged local owner, they set tables, hung paper lanterns, and warmed bread and chicken stew. Their 10-year anniversary dinner was simple yet touching. The migrant family sang happy birthday to their child. An elderly single woman invited to the same table. James, the once waiter, entered with a thank you card. Bridge Youth has been approved. I'm the first director. Ethan raised his water glass and looked at Maya. I've never seen a fancier party. More beautiful. Maya squeezed his hand. Because I never met a wealthy man who understood real value until now. Camera panned the entrance. Outside, a new sign on the old Ivory Tower building. New era dining, all welcome. A promise? Perhaps? A new beginning? Certainly. A timely small act can change how society sees fairness and dignity. 3 weeks later, front page of the Atlanta Tribune, class barriers at the table, a black woman and a lesson for the elite. Cover image, Maya standing at the Ivory Tower's door, her reflection in the Bentley's polished date. A viral podcast. If a billionaire's wife was refused for her skin and attire. Imagine how many suffer in silence. Social media, clips of Ethan versus Charles spread. Hashtags let her dine and hashtag value over velvet trended nationally. In a small classroom, a black girl raised her hand. Miss Maya didn't shout, but the world still heard her. A restaurant chain CEO on TV. We're reevaluating our service standards. No one should be turned away for clothes or ethnicity. Sophia, the former hostess, wrote again to the Johnson Foundation. I couldn't see Maya then. I only saw what I thought she wasn't. I'm sorry, not for reputation, but because I want to learn how to see with truth. At Community Hearth, Maya watched diverse people entering, every shade, hairstyle, pair of worn shoes. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. They're calling you a symbol. Maya smiled softly. No need to be a symbol. I just want every person walking out to feel respected. Instead of retaliation, they chose reconstruction. From hurt, they created opportunity. Johnson Foundation HQ, 1 week after the Tribune article. James, the ex-waiter, stood before a presentation, his eyes shining. The Reclaim Youth Project now doesn't just teach skills. It teaches young people. Your worth isn't defined by your origins, your skin, or not having a suit. In the audience, Maya and Ethan sat side by side, her hand in his, this time not for strength, but pride. Teenagers practiced public speaking. James helped them write their first resumes. A free coding class opened in Maya's old neighborhood. A boy spoke. I never thought someone like Ms. Maya lived just 2 blocks away. A girl added, Now I want to become a restaurant manager, but at a place everyone is welcome. Local TV covered it. The Reclaim Youth Initiative receives $500,000 from the Johnson Foundation, expanding to 3 more city areas next year. Maya passed a classroom where a formerly invisible kid sketched dreams with colored chalk, dust like the chalk she once carried. A young child asked, Ms. Maya, were you afraid that night? Maya smiled warmly. Yes, but I was more afraid. If I stayed silent, you'd think silence was normal. Arrogance can build walls, but truth always finds a way to pierce them. Matinee, 1 week after the discriminatory incident at the Ivory Tower restaurant, the article from the Atlanta Journal has gone viral with over 1 million shares. The screen shows Maya and the Ethan leaving the restaurant, camera flashes blazing, with a headline scrolling below. Billionaire's wife kicked out for dressing too simply. Restaurant claims we didn't recognize her. Public not buying it. Margaret sat in a glass-walled office, her once perfect hair now slightly tousled. In front of her was a thick stack of reservation cancellations. 12 VIPs canceled this week. The press is swarming like flies. Sophia walked in, eyes red, holding an envelope. I'm handing in my resignation. I can't pretend this didn't happen. Margaret flinched but didn't stop her. They both knew this wave couldn't be resisted. A brief kitchen staff interview. She just wanted a table, and they acted like she tainted the place. James was right to quit. Now everyone looks at me like I was complicit. And maybe I stayed silent. From the City Cultural Council. We are reviewing the Ivory Tower's eligibility to host official city events due to systemic discriminatory behavior. The restaurant sign was taken down quietly. In its place, a temporary banner read, Under new management, all are welcome here. When the silent begin to speak, even the most arrogant places must listen. No need for white linens or crystal glasses. Just a kind gaze is enough for a complete night. Friday night, 3 weeks after the incident at the Ivory Tower. Winter was settling in. A cold breeze slipped through alleyways in West Atlanta. Maya stepped out of the car, her arm in Ethan's. She wore a simple wine-colored cotton dress, hair loose and natural. Not glamorous, just real. In front of them stood Community Hearth, a small community restaurant, warm yellow lights glowing through fogged-up window panes. A handwritten sign on the door read, Pay what you can, everyone welcome. Inside there was no expensive wine or tuxedo-clad service, just long wooden tables, families gathered, a little girl giggling with cake smeared on her father's cheek. A young waitress in a plaid shirt and apron with the Community Hearth logo approached. Welcome. Feel free to sit anywhere you like. She looked at Maya and smiled sincerely. You look beautiful in that dress. I'm Kiara. Maya paused briefly, then nodded, her eyes softening. Ethan poured water. Maya glanced around and whispered, No one's judging anyone here. He gently squeezed her hand, because they see what's right from the start. Maya inhaled deeply and smiled, a lightness she hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Sometimes it only takes one person daring to stand, to open the door for hundreds more. As Maya enjoyed her meal, chuckling at a boy sneaking veggies into his napkin, the door opened. A cold gust swept in, followed by James, the young man who had boldly tossed his uniform on the counter at the Ivory Tower. Today he wore an old coat, holding a notebook and 3 sheets filled with scribbles. Sorry I'm late, James panted, cheeks red from the wind. I couldn't miss this. I wanted to thank you both. Maya stood. Ethan smiled and shook his hand. James pulled out 1 sheet and handed it to Maya. The heading read, Bridge Start Education Project, from Community for Community. I submitted a funding proposal. It got approved. The Johnson Foundation signed off. The first class opens next month for kids who are expelled, ignored, kids like I used to be. James's eyes gleamed. He clenched his fist. If you hadn't spoken up that day, I wouldn't have dared do anything. Maya looked at him, eyes glistening. I didn't change your life, James. You did that yourself with one brave decision. From one scornful glance, a dream was born, and no one can extinguish it now. Some doors only open, when a truth can no longer be denied. 3 weeks later, a calm morning in Atlanta, Maya held a steaming cup of coffee as Ethan entered the kitchen and placed a copy of the Atlanta Journal on the table. Bold headline, "The Ivory Tower Accused of Racism, Witnesses Videos and the Elite's Backlash." Maya froze. On the cover, her in the gray sweater, Ethan holding her hand, James walking away from the counter as stunned diners watched. They got footage from street cameras, Ethan said, pointing to the article. Since the incident, dozens of VIP customers have canceled. Margaret, the general manager, resigned under pressure. Sophia, the hostess, sent Maya a public apology letter admitting she'd grown too accustomed to flawed standards. The final line of the letter left Maya silent. I once believed I was just following the rules, until I realized I had become the rule. In a quiet corner of the reading room, Maya gently folded the paper. No joy of victory, just peace and a faint hope. Maybe. One less door will slam shut on a black girl just because she isn't wearing silk. True elegance isn't found in white linens, but in how we treat each other. Ethan's old pickup truck parked in front of a modest brick building. Community Hearth. Hand-painted on a wooden sign swaying at the door. They walked in. No one looked them over asking, "Do you belong?" No one asked, "Do you have a reservation?" Just a young waitress with a bright smile. "Right this way. Window seats are sunny today." No chandeliers, no Italian wine, no silk napkins, just as laughter, conversation, everyday people, a car mechanic, a single mom cutting her son's birthday cake. An elderly couple nodded to Maya and Ethan like old neighbors. Cut to James, the young ex-waiter, walking in, same old shoes, but steps now confident. He hugged Maya, beaming. "The teen program's approved. I'm drafting the participant list for the first round." They created change. Not with money, but with the choice not to stay silent. Night falls. Maya and Ethan sit by the window, warm yellow light surrounding them. Ethan said softly, 10 years ago, we might have been at a chandelier-lit restaurant. Maya smiled. But only here do I see kindness that has no price. Maya smiled. Not a smile of triumph, but of someone who walked through pain without losing faith. Ethan poured her a glass of lemonade from an old plastic pitcher. No champagne, no crystal, just freedom, honesty, and kindness. Le Chateau Blanc, the once controversial fine dining restaurant, officially changes ownership. A new sign now reads, "Everyone is welcome." Former staff member Sophia publicly apologized, admitting, "I didn't just wrong Maya, I wronged myself." James, the young man once forced to escort Maya out, now stood on a small stage at Community Hearth. He spoke about the new program. We'll teach soft skills and critical thinking to teens, those often left behind because of circumstances, appearances, or being seen instead of being heard. We're not building restaurants, we're building hope. We don't need to be served, we need to be respected. Community Hearth closed for the night. Maya and Ethan walked out, hand in hand. In the sky, a shooting star streaked past. Ethan whispered, "We didn't choose revenge. We chose to become light." If Maya's story made you reflect, leave a comment. Have you ever witnessed injustice? Did you stay silent? Or stand up? Don't forget to share this video to spread the message. Respect, no discrimination. Human worth needs no conditions. We cannot change the past, but we can rewrite the future. Maya Brooks.